Hello there, I'm Anthony. Thanks for stopping by. And today I'm going to be working on a painting I've been doing for a while now. And I'm going to be working on some shoes. So we've got a couple here standing on this glacier, and it looks like right now this is a married couple. It looks like the groom is a doctor because he's got these blue looking feet. But he's not actually a doctor, as far as I know of. We're actually going to be covering over the blue and adding black. So they're going to look more like what you'd expect a guy to be wearing if he was wearing a suit. You can only see his legs a little bit right now, but he's wearing a suit. And so I'm going to paint those shoes in today. So I'm going to be using oil paint, and the main color I'm using for the black is natural black oxide, which I'm going to get out now. This is a very strong black. And dries nice and glossy, which is something I like about it. And I'm gonna get some white. Now there's some kind of like a reflection from the sky happening on the left side of the shoe, coming from the blue of the sky over that way. And then you have the light of the sun from the right. So it's kind of like a white highlight on the right and a bluer one over on the left side. So this is something that's really noticeable in certain cases, especially after it snows. Of course, if you see this whole scene zoomed out, there's a lot of stuff going on with ice and things, and it's blue, but that's not necessarily just from the sky. It's really more of just, the color of the snow up in the Arctic is just blue itself. Okay, so getting some white. This is lead titanium white here. And I guess I will get some blue also to use for the highlight on the left side. I'll just put this over here since the highlight's on the right for the white area. So the sun is not, looks like in the photo it was not out really all the way. I think it was maybe kind of overcast. So there's actually some clouds that were put in there by the photographer just to make it look nicer than having a gray sky. But there's a couple places where it sort of looks like you can sort of see the sun a little bit more clearly. So on the back of the shoe, kind of has that look a little bit on the right side, but it just might be kind of more reflecting just like a overcast sort of a look. And that's just how it shows up. Who knows? Well, I guess the photographer knows. He's the one that messed around with the photo, which is fine. But just for the painting, sometimes this is like one of those things where if you're using a painting for reference or using a photo for reference for a painting, if you didn't take the photo yourself, you don't really know what was done to it. If you just find a picture online or something like that. So I think I will use, looking at which brush to get here. Go with a few different ones. I think I'll pick this one here. So, especially nowadays with AI, if you're not interested in using an AI image for reference because things are not always exactly totally accurate on them, if you just randomly find something online, it's pretty hard. It's getting really tough to tell if something is really AI or not. So, it's one of the nice things about just having your own reference. You can control everything yourself and get it the way you want it. If you need to make notes about the color of the light, you can do that, because when you shoot the picture, it may look darker or lighter than it was actually looked when you were taking it. So, that's another thing. Even if it's not really altered, just the camera itself may look it may show the image differently just because that's just how it showed up, or, the exposure is a little dark or whatever. All right, just wiping off my brush a little bit, and then I'm going to start on that outline for the shoe. I've kind of got the shape in there, but I'm going to kind of fix that up a little bit when we're actually doing the black part of it. And then there is this gold metal piece going across the top. It's not really a buckle. I don't know what the purpose of that thing is. I guess it's just decorative. I kind of wonder if like a long time ago there was some purpose for it. I don't know. But that will be kind of the last thing to do. I'm not sure if I'm going to do that today. Maybe not, because going into the black with all that, you know, lighter color would be kind of tricky. So there's also a red and green band going across there. Okay, and so I'm gonna also put just a little bit of oil in here for my cerulean blue, because it dries a little matte. I'm using my epoxide for that. My fancy little epoxide container here. Okay, now just work that in there. It's best to just add any kind of medium like that to a color that sinks. It's best to add it in there in the beginning while it's still on the palette, so you don't have to deal with it later. I guess that's a pretty good amount. That's maybe a little bit extra, but I think it's fine, especially since it's going to be mixed with the black and some of that white. All right, now I'm going to go, I guess I'll just use the pure black. You have to be careful using pure black in paintings. In fact, I don't know if I want to maybe lighten this a little bit. Yeah, maybe I will. Just pure black on its own can be a little bit heavy, and it can sort of stand out a little too much. Partly because in real life, you don't really see things that are just solid black very often, unless it's in a dark room or something. Even if you see a black car, there's going to be lots of reflections happening on it. And all kinds of just, you know, like the way the light kind of shows up. So get a little bit of this white here. It's actually showing up a little more than I would expect, because this black is just very strong. Okay, so I want to go a little bit lighter than that still. You can always go darker later pretty easily. It's not very much paint. I'm just getting the color figured out first. This is probably not really showing up so well on the camera, but it's looking a little bit more of a gray now. So I'm going to do just a little bit lighter, and then I think that'll be fine. It's just too dark. It can be kind of shocking, or kind of just look like it doesn't really fit with everything else. I think that is pretty good there, so I'm going to just go with that. Shoes are actually kind of a tricky shape to paint, because they're this sort of specific looking thing, but they're really just weird looking. You know, men's shoes like this. I guess women's too, but especially men's. Just, I think the heel, you know, if you see like a woman's shoe with a heel, then kind of tends to give it a certain sort of shape that's a little maybe easier to do. But for men's shoes, you know, you just look at it from a slightly different angle, and it just totally changes the shape in these subtle little ways. So you have to really be careful about the angles so they actually show up right. These shoes look like they have maybe a little bit of extra space in the front to make them a little pointier looking. So that affects just the proportions and, of course, the shape. You actually have these, I think the things you wear when you're just, I think if you see the, you know, utility man climbing up the pole and he's got those spikes on his shoes, they have those kind of things on just to get up the ice here, but I'm not painting them on in the painting. So I kind of did a sort of quick job removing them on Photoshop. just on the reference, but doesn't look exactly like a regular shoe right now, just from the main reference photo. I have one other one of the shoes that I'm looking at too, but it's the lighting slightly different. It's a little bit of a different angle. Okay, so I give this a little bit more of a sort of pointy look than what I have from the lighter blue color in the bottom, in the base color. I think actually I have to be careful. I don't bump my stand here. Just move this over. Okay, so I'm thinking maybe I need to bring the shoe over to the left some more. Oh, hey, Schmuckleberry. Is there a lot of dust? Well, I have a lot of texture on here just to make it look like these little kind of chunks of ice. So it's sort of an interesting texture. It's like if you looked at a snow cone up really close, that's sort of what this all looks like. So, all this stuff I did here, I kind of layered it up a lot to give it that sort of a look without, sitting there and just painting every single little bit individually. So, looking at the angle of this side here, kind of goes out to the left a little bit more. I think I'm gonna just bring that out there. Yeah, sometimes when you have things like that where it's a lot of things happening, yeah, I don't know if I ever did well, I mean, I never painted ice this way before, but sometimes I just kind of have to like invent things based on what I need it to look like. Just kind of like figure out what's going to look the best. So that was what I did here. So when you have a lot of little things like that, there's times where you can kind of figure out a way you can do it without having to spend as much time as you need to just go in there and just do every little dot. I mean, that would really take a long time. And the sort of the texture I did, like some of the stuff right over here. I don't know if you can see the shadow. I just kind of like put a bunch of white paint on there, and I let that dry, and I went back over it later on, and I just used a tiny bit of paint to kind of spread it across all that stuff, and then it just showed up in some of the points that are the highest. So it sort of gave it this kind of, it's one of those things where you can let the paint sort of take part of the load of the work. Instead of, just doing it individually on your own, you just kind of like use all those little kind of bumps and things just as a way to get there faster. Renaissance, man. Well, I like the Renaissance. I want to say that there was a Joe Pesci movie called Renaissance Man, but I might be thinking of With Honors. Okay, I think the foot looks a little bit kind of weird right now. Maybe want to bring this down a little bit. Then if I want to bring this part to the left some more, I think a little bit more. And then a few times where I had to paint shoes where I had to kind of like adjust the angle. If I had, a couple that was dancing or something, and I took their picture and they were just sort of standing there. I needed to just move the shoes in a different place so that it looked like they're actually in motion. There have been times where that was very difficult. Like maybe you might not think that shoes would be the hardest thing to paint, because they're just these things that kind of go over your feet. But slightest little change in the angles really makes a difference. Having it look right or just kind of strange. I'm going to just cover the inside part here. Sometimes when you do that, it's a little easier to see if the shape is really what you need or not. And there's a little bit of texture right here, which I'm not really liking, so I'll actually scrape that off. It's one of those things you could maybe leave it, but if the whole shoe is flat and there's this one little thing that's sticking out, this might look kind of stupid. Some people paint with a lot of texture, so you know that kind of thing wouldn't even really matter, but for my paintings, a lot of the things, like, they're not going to be all that spiky looking. Unless it's something like this ground over here, which is supposed to have a lot of texture. So the bottom shape here is definitely a little bit off. It actually needs to get pointier. Okay, that definitely seems better. It's a little bit like he's got slippers now, but I guess that's sort of just the shape of the shoe. Kind of are slipper shaped. I'm not sure if this is exactly right, but I think I'm gonna start the other one now. I think it's at least pretty close to what I need. Seems like it does need to be a little bit, maybe wider. Adjusting the size of the reference. Well, all right, I'm gonna come back to this in a little bit. Now I'm going to mix some more of this gray. And then do the other foot. Just waiting for the other shoe to drop. I mean, it's already down. He's just standing there. Now the other shoe is partly going underneath the dress, which happens a lot with, you know, wedding dresses. This one's not particularly poofy, but especially the poofy ones, you might lose an entire shoe under there. They're standing pretty close. I think a good name for like a wedding dress show would be Poof Factor. Some of them get pretty big. Of course, you could also use that for the name of a show about a salon. All right, so this is pretty close, I guess. Close enough. And if this other shoe is a little bit darker, doesn't really matter because it's sort of tucked away in the shadow a little bit more anyway, but whatever. This is pretty much the same. Okay. So and just do that same thing. Sometimes with the reflections and things, it can be kind of fun. Painting shiny little spots in there. You know, sometimes that'll be the kind of thing that really makes it sort of come together. And highlights like that, especially if you're doing eyes, a lot of the time that really makes a huge difference in just making it look sort of more dimensional and more real. And with eyes, if you don't paint a highlight in there, they tend to look kind of dead. Which would be fine if you're painting a dead person, but in most other cases, probably not what you want. But there are some cases where you don't see a highlight in people's eyes if they're in a dark room or something, but in most cases, definitely in the day, probably going to see some kind of highlight somewhere, if not 2 or 3. I'm doing this one the other way around. I'm just doing the middle part first and then finishing the edge after. Just having the solid shape of a darker color like that, you can really see if it actually looks kind of like what you need, versus just having a line, because then it doesn't look like the shape, it's just like an outline. It's the outline of a shape, but it just looks different visually when you actually have a solid color there. Okay, so there's actually a little lift right here, which you don't see in the reference too much, because that was where I went over that, whatever the thing is with the spikes on the bottom. Those called crampons? Or is that something different? I don't know. I think I actually want to bring this up just a little bit right here. Okay, so got to get a little bit of light showing through in that lift. Might have to paint some lighter color in there, which is fine, but I don't want to forget about this. Like, I'm paying attention to it now, so I'm just going to get it in there at least to kind of show where there's supposed to be a lift, or the space, I guess, next to the lift or whatever that is. Okay, that's pretty good, I think. All right, so now, and if anybody has any questions, feel free to just put it in the chat, just about painting in general, or if you don't know what the hell I'm doing, you can ask that too. So I'm going to keep going with the front of this shoe on the left now. This is what I was saying, these small little angles and things, you know, just the slightest little change there will make this actually look like a good shoe shape versus this kind of clunky, weird sock thing or something. I imagine his feet are pretty cold standing on a glacier, but they'd be extra cold in socks. Anybody ever watch the original X-Files? I guess, did they remake it? think they had a mini-series that you listened to on Audible or something recently. Remember Mulder had these like, dress shoes that whenever he was walking around in a building, make that loud, like man's shoe stomping sound. There's also a very distinct sound whenever he took his gun out from the holster. It was like, whoa. Okay, so this is looking a little weird. Almost like, I don't know, I want to say like, it's giving me like duckbill vibes right now. That's not what I want. But there's something not too different from this, which is what I actually want. I'm just figuring out what it is. This almost looks like some kind of strange pilgrim shoe right now. Never really got the buckle on the pilgrim shoes. Maybe the top is actually, I think that's the problem. It's curving down like this where it needs to go the other way. Like, why did those buckles go on the shoe? Is that also just like a style thing? Pilgrims were not exactly kind of like style icons. So I imagine there must have been some reason that it was on there. There's another chunk right here. I don't want to get through. It's just, I don't think you can really see it, but it's a little too much texture in that spot. Keep on hitting the camera stand with my brush. And also, once you add the details in the middle, the whole thing will probably tend to kind of look better anyway, beyond this sort of silhouette. I just scrape off that little extra piece there. I'm just using a palette knife here, sort of like a razor blade, but I wouldn't really want to use a razor blade if I didn't have to, because you actually go a little bit in the wrong angle and scrape down to the surface that way, and that could lead to some problems. The palette knives are pretty sharp though. I mean, I actually cut myself on one or two of them over the years. This one's not extremely sharp, but good enough for this. If you do see a chunk like that from underneath, or just like a line from an edge you were painting that you ended up moving it or something, it's a good idea to just kind of take care of that, unless you're painting very thick. Good idea to get that out of there, especially for anything important like a face. Because if you don't, then you might just paint the whole thing in and it looks really good, but then you just see like there's this big shadow hanging off of that thing and it just doesn't look good. It might look like there's like the person has a zit or something. Nobody wants a portrait of themselves with a zit. That's right up there with double chins and eye bags. All right, so I think this is kind of getting there. Maybe like this over here needs to come out a little bit. I remember hearing in a podcast, like an audiobook basically that was released on a podcast about British type of a car, which is notoriously the shape of a shoe, like a dress shoe like this. Never got those in America. But I looked it up and it did in fact look very much like a shoe. I don't remember what it was called. Something from maybe the 70s. And I think they were a little bit fancy. Now it looks like he's got blue socks on, which is fine. He actually doesn't have any socks on, but looks a little bit less strange than how it looked before. I'll maybe bring this up a little more. This is like really extremely fine-tuning type adjustments here. Would be more important than, pant leg or something. If that was just a little bit slightly one way or the other, wouldn't really make as much of a difference. Okay. I'm gonna bring this angle up here a little bit, slightly more. I have a reference picture of the groom wearing shoes that was taken later on because I asked for it specifically because of those things going over the shoes, but the angle is a little different on that photo, so I'm kind of doing an amalgamation of the two together. Just adjust this edge here. Looks like it's leaning too far to the left on the top. I'm gonna make sure it's not slanted. Well, I need the back of the shoe to look like it's upright. I'm gonna give it a little bit more of an angle here on this lift also. But don't even ask me to put an Uber down there. I guess when you think about it, those little lifts on the bottom of the shoes, they kind of look like human hooves. They're a little weird. Okay, so I'm thinking this is a little bit higher than I need now. I'm just looking at the alternate reference. I've lightened it to see what the actual shape is down here. They're not really that high. Maybe a little more like this. I mean, I doubt anyone's going to really pay that much attention to the heel and the shoe shape exactly, but might as well try to get it at least as close as I can to the right shape. Sometimes that's one of the things with painting, especially commissions. You never know if anyone even cares about a certain thing that I might notice there's something a little off, but I might be the only person that would ever even notice that. Okay, I think I'm liking that better. Kind of does seem like this. I guess, I don't know if you call that a tongue with this type of shoe, but that part is maybe a little bit too far to the right over there. So I think I need to maybe wipe that off a little bit. Just bring it over. I could paint over it, but especially with this black, it's just so strong that you have to really work to cover that up. So just do this first. Yeah, I think that's better. I'm looking at the negative space of this. I mean, it's maybe not exactly negative, but just the shape of that blue area there. It's showing the foot. Just seeing like what that looks like compared to everything else. Need some more paper towel. So I guess that's pretty good. Just checking if there's anything else about these shoe shapes that needs to be adjusted. I'm checking like how wide it is on the one side compared to how narrow it becomes. But yeah, I guess that one seems okay. All right, so I'm gonna come back to the other one now. And let's see here. I think together they look pretty much like they go together. Just I'm seeing like, does this one look like it's too small compared to that one? I mean, it's turning, so we're seeing it at a different angle, of course. But I want its shoes to be like on feet that are the same size, so it does seem a little bit short, maybe. I think I'm gonna go in there, do something with that. I feel like the shape is pretty good, but they're too short, they're too short. Also looking at where these kind of connect and start and end, like where the tip of the shoe is over here on the references. I mean, it seems like it's right around there, but bring it down just a little bit more. If the shoes do not fit, you must acquit. That's how that line went, right? Okay, and a little bit more. Just a little. I'm gonna make sure this back edge here is straight enough also, going vertically, just like the other one. The back of each of these shoes, I mean, it's a rounded area, but something like that. I guess in that way, it seems like they're kind of lining up okay as far as like how big they should be compared to one another. Well, yeah, this is one of those things that's kind of tricky just to really kind of judge like if it's the right size or not, especially since this one's covered up. I'm gonna bring it down just a little bit more. Just notice I don't really have the lift over here actually, so it's really something I should have there. I just add in a little piece here, and then I'm going to wipe some off to fix that. I have to say, this shoe on the right, definitely in comparing the two reference pictures I have, they're completely different shapes. Looks a lot more long and narrow in the one compared to the other, which is more sort of almost like a triangle shape. One picture is a little more from above, whereas the other one's kind of sort of looking sort of forward towards the shoe. So, you know, that can change a lot, especially for shoes because they're just on the ground. Versus like everything else, you know, you're standing up. All right, I feel like that's pretty good. So now there's going to be this piece back here for the lift. It's going to go down this way. Then it's also going to go over because it's going to go across the foot. So I don't want to have a spike down there. It should be kind of going like this. And I'll just fill this out right here. Anybody hear about those weird drone sightings in New Jersey? I'm in northern New Jersey. I know one or two people that saw them outside their house recently, just hanging around all night. They kept a plane from landing. Also, pretty recently. Yeah, I feel like this is maybe a little too pointy down here, so I'm going to bring it across just a little bit more like this. And I think that's probably all I need. It's kind of straight right here a little bit. Okay, I think I've got the shape now. The only thing I'm looking at before I keep going is just any kind of overlap over here. I think I'm actually going to just do a little bit of black right there inside the dress. Because that would be getting less light. So I figure the edge of the shoe is going to be right over here someplace. Can't really see the edge of the shoe in the photo too well, but I'm just kind of estimating where it should be. All right, I guess something like that. And I am going to move on now to some highlights. I've got white ones on the right. All I'm using right now is the black and the white, so I'm going to do them first and then move on to the gray in a little bit. The kind of bluish gray. I guess that's, could go maybe a little bit lighter for the lightest part of the highlight. Just wiping off the paint on the palette before wiping it on the paper towel, since I can still use some of that or something. Very tough to see what the highlight should look like from the spiky attachment things. No, I think I'm actually going to just open up the original picture before I edited it, because it's really tough to see what this part's supposed to be like. When there's things in front of the things you're trying to see, you can't see them. That's just one of those universal truths in life. Okay, so if that helps. Hey, we're doing something more than an outline now. Exciting. Not sure if I might want to switch to a different brush for this. It's like it's going all right, but it really has a very square edge, which is not necessarily the best for getting sort of smooth blending like I'm doing right now. But yeah, I don't know, maybe it's okay. Something I'm just noticing is there's actually a little break in this highlight here on the original reference I was looking at before I had adjusted it. A little break there because the straps from the spikes are going across and they're covering the light right there, so I need to put that in the picture because it's not putting the thing in there, which is actually causing the break in the reference. Sometimes it's hard to tell what's going on with little highlights and things. There's parts that may be adjusting or changing things that you're getting rid of, and if you get rid of them, then the highlight would change also. Not really loving how this is looking so far, but yeah, gotta do something to fix it up. Let me just come back to this one in a minute. Let's see what happens if I do this over here. So that they have a kind of similar look going on. You can see a little bit of reflected light coming up from this ice underneath the foot here. Yeah, really not liking how this is looking right now with these highlights, but this is what can happen when the reference is different than I need to paint it. I think I'm going to switch brushes though, because this one is not convenient for this part. Okay, so here's a brush that's a little on the small side, but it's a soft bristle, so I think maybe that would be better for what I'm doing right now. It's fairly soft. I think I'm going to do the blue actually first and come back to this other part. color of the sky is mixing with the black, so it's a little tricky to see exactly how much blue I really need there. Maybe a little bit more. So they look a little bit too glossy now. Gotta just sort of dull them a little bit, but that's basically where the highlights should be for the most part. I'm going to need to mix a little bit more blue to see if I could avoid it, but not working. tempting sometimes when it's clear. You need more color. Might want to just try to just scrape by with slight measly amount that you have on the palette, but you need more paint. You got to get more paint. Sure if that should actually be a darker blue now that I'm really looking at it. Seems like it's too light, so maybe that's part of what I'm still working on here. Yeah, I think that's better. Which kind of sucks because I have to go over all the different highlights I did now on that side. But it's fine. It ends up looking like a good shoe at the end, then that's the goal. I need more blue again. Ended up using more than I thought I would because I just used more in general. This black I'm using is so strong, it's actually mixing with what I'm adding on here a little bit more than some other ones might, but I'm gonna add some more paint. Good enough. This is like the Prussian blue of blacks. I don't really use Prussian blue, but it's another really strong pigment. I feel like this one is a little bit too blue now. I'm gonna go back the other way, just slightly more white. Oh, well, there's a little more than I was trying for. Like I was saying before, things that are black, really, there's a lot of reflections and things happening on them to the point where you don't really see, as like solid black as much as you might think. So you can see how this is happening now with these shoes. A lot of the black is definitely getting covered up here. I'm really fighting with this a lot more than I feel like I should be, but I think it's just because the black I'm using is so strong. It might be easier to just kind of go back and fix this up on another layer after this is dried. But so I'll just do a little bit more on the white shadow, or the white reflection first. Yeah, really, this reflection coming from underneath over here also looks like it's a little bit on the blue side. So it's a little bit surprising, but actually just add that. think this is the first time I've actually tried to do something like this with this black. I only started using it not too long ago. Where I like put down the black and went over it with new layer like this basically while it's still wet. So I think next time I would use a different one because this is not the easiest for what I'm doing right now. But it's a nice color in general. I think I'm getting pretty close to the end for today. Still not thrilled with it, but I think I am going to be touching it up again later on after it's dry. And I'm planning to, do the little gold piece later on anyway. So it's that part that goes across right here. Thinking maybe I will just darken this a little bit in some places here first. There's actually a little bit of a sort of blue highlight like what's happening over here. It's like a really narrow one on the right also, but not so small. I don't know if I should even try to put it in there. I guess the one on the right is okay. I'm going to just adjust the back of the one on the left. Going over this as lightly as I can, pretty much, just to get this highlight a little softer here. Actually just doing kind of like a stippling. Okay, well, I think that's going to be about it for today. So, I think I am probably going to be touching up some of these highlights a little bit more later once it's, you know, what I have right here is dry, and be adding in some of the hardware on the shoes. And there's that little green and red stripe on there. Maybe you can't really see that too well from just like the little picture on the screen, but yeah, do that later once this layer is dry, and I think it'll come together a little bit more, but I guess it's all right, just overall. So anyway, thanks for watching. I will probably be doing this again the same time next week on the 19th. it's 6:30 in the east. And if you want to come back again, be nice to see you. If not, maybe some other time. Okay, bye. That's the wrong thing.